security industry is sort of calcified at this point, in my view. We've got major players looking after major enterprises, government, and defense, and they have sort of settled on a suite of product tools that major enterprises can implement to help secure their network, but it's a huge mess.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Grow IT podcast. One of your hosts here, Trey King. And today we are very excited to have our guest, Mr. George Sidman from TrustWrx. And as you guys know by now, this podcast is where thought leaders come to tell us a bit more about their niche expertise. So today we'll be diving into George's story a bit, as well as what it is his company does. So make sure to stick around for this one. But without further ado, George, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
George, to kick things off, would you kindly please, just introduce yourself and as well as provide us with a bit around your background?
Okay, well, George Sidman, I'm the CEO of TrustWrx. It's about a 3-year-old company that is evolving technology out of a prior security company. My background is about 30 years of doing startups. This is my sixth computer software startup company. Um, and We're focused primarily on a new method of securing edge networks. And Without getting too much into that part of it at this point, I've done other companies. I had the first company to put computer systems into public and academic libraries.
Wow.
Uh, and we automated over 300 libraries in the US and Canada and Europe very successfully before the internet and came along. And then the internet came along and changed everything. Um, so that's a very quick background on where I'm coming from.
Excellent. Tell me, George, obviously, like you said, you've been around the block, right? Been doing this for quite, I think that's putting it lightly. Uh, Tell me, George, given the industry that you're in, from a market trend point of view, like what are you currently picking up? What's out there? What way is the wind blowing these days?
Well, it's the whole security industry is sort of calcified at this point, in my view. We've got major players looking after major enterprises, government, and defense. Um, and they have sort of settled on a suite of product tools that major enterprises can implement to help secure their networks. But it's a huge mess. Typical major enterprise will have 30 or 40 different software products that they have to keep synchronized, drawn together, working together, and it is a huge disaster.
Is it
Uh, um, and and if you're questioning whether it works or not, just look at the losses to cybercrime.
good
Um,
point,
you know, so the big gap in the market is what we're going after, which is the managed service providers.
right?
Today, managed service providers service almost 70% of small and medium businesses because a doctor's office or a lawyer's firm or something like that doesn't have IT staff.
Mm.
Uh, they have to go out of house to get it now, and the MSPs are the answer. And and the flip side of it is that the pandemic sent everybody to work from home. And now 75% of the threats to the doctor office database is coming from the home. So there's huge gaps there in the security model in the marketplace that have been exacerbated by the hybrid workforce. Um, and the major companies don't get to go work in that space because their technologies are too expensive and they're too complicated to be taken on by a law firm or a
Yeah,
doctor's office.
well,
So
that size
that's
of
sort of this. state of the market at the moment.
Yeah, that's so interesting. You mentioned that. I actually one of our clients mentioned that to me the other day. Is that a couple of years ago it was only like these big corporates and these big firms that were targeted, whereas now it's these small companies that are kept at ransom, right? So from a cybersecurity point of view, I fully not understand everything, but I've definitely heard that it's a bit of a problem at the moment. Tell me, I think this is a good time. You briefly touched on it, but if you don't mind, just to elaborate a bit more on what your company does.
TrustWrx mission is to secure the edge network and everything that's attached to it. And by securing it, we mean providing a private network infrastructure within which the only traffic that can move is qualified traffic that comes from devices that are on that network. Part of the mission is to turn the edge network completely invisible to the public internet, and our technology does that as well.
Wow.
Another element of it is nobody's been able to secure the billions of IoT devices that are out there because of the memory constraints and the variable operating systems and the lack of standards in the IoT space. We do secure every IoT device that's hooked up to the edge network. And by securing it, we control who can see it, who can talk to it, and have a dialogue with that IoT device. Today, nobody else can do that at this point. So there's a number of things that we wrap into our secure envelope that solve really pressing problems. And we're a bit concerned that we don't see anybody else attacking the problem that we're approaching. Um, but as we know, everything that moves on the internet moves in packets. And there's been a big zero trust movement, started by Forrester and codified by NIST under the assumption that no packet is trustworthy. And that's true. But in our networks, all packets are trusted because we have the provenance of where the packet came from and what you can do with it attached right to the individual packets. So this is a
Right.
new technology that has been patented. We have a number of patents on the technology. We have licensed these patents off to major companies you may have heard of: Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, and Google. Um, and under those licenses, they are in standby mode while we bring this technology to fruition. Um, so it's a whole new concept about how you make a network and the packets moving on it completely trustworthy. And by doing that, you can reject all packets that don't belong there.
My word, that is profound. That is truly profound. I wanted to ask here, there's a lot of value. What would you say is the most significant value that your company brings to the table? But I mean, just what you said there, that's just what you told me. That is very much profound. Um, Tell me, George, can you possibly provide us with like an example of a client that was in a pinch, when it comes to these types of things, and how you guys have managed to assist them?
Yeah, let me start by saying that we're about 4 or 5 months away from our first beta test sites with managed service providers. This technology has been in over 2 years in development because this is not, another website selling beauty products.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, we are we are inside the router, on top of the chip, and programming at the lowest possible level inside the router. And then we're backed up at AWS with all the standard cloud-based support for what we're doing. Um, so it's, as we know, the internet is about 45 years old. And the
Right.
original technologies that underpin the internet were developed about 40 to 45 years ago. The last serious update to those technologies occurred 25 years ago at the turn of the century. And that's when we got HTTPS, we got VPNs, TLS, serious encryption came along then. Since then, nothing has been done to really improve the state of internet security. And so we are a application-based overlay that solves a whole range of these problems.
Very, very interesting. Tell me, obviously, like we said, you've been doing this for quite some time now. I was just curious, what was it like in the beginning that got you so, passionate about what you're doing? How did this like start? Where did this start out that you decided this is the way I want to go?
Well, in around 1999, um, I set up an ISP in the area where we live, the Monterey Peninsula in California.
Yeah,
And 2001, we started deploying 802.11 radios for internet connectivity because all we had was DSL circuits and they wouldn't go anywhere. At that point, it became painfully aware everybody's email was moving over the internet in the clear. And everybody was screaming bloody murder about that, but the gatekeepers of the internet totally ignored it.
yeah.
And they ignored it to this day, and your emails are in public view to this day. I created a company in 2004 called Weblock. And in Weblock, we created a private email solution where everything was doubly encrypted. And we had good success in healthcare, in law enforcement, um, in deploying private email circuits. But 2004 was the big aha moment when I said, this is stupid. Somebody's got to be able to take these creaky old base protocols and use them to create a private environment. So we did it successfully for private email. And so my defective genes began percolating and thinking if I can do it for private email, I can secure the entire stack. So we began developing those concepts. We built the email company up through the late teens and then sold it off. And I took some time off and we noodled around and we were getting ready to fire up to come back in to create what is today TrustWrx. Just as we were getting ready to go, the pandemic hit,
Oh my
stopped
word.
us in our tracks. But it allowed us to pivot what we were doing into the emerging dynamic in the market,
Hmm.
which has now late 2002, early 2003 evolved. We got Zoom, we got conferencing.
Yeah,
40% of the workforce is still at home. The majority of threats to small business databases are coming from the home. Um, and the big guys can't play in this space. I think that the TAM for our business model in the US alone is $12 billion.
just wanted to tell you, I think that must be a crazy figure.
Yeah, and that's being pretty damn conservative about the way we ran our numbers.
Yeah,
But when you take a look at the small business edge networks that could use better security at $10 a seat per month, that multiplier is hard to sniff at.
yeah,
So,
goodness. Then, George, if we can maybe step back a bit from the business and just talk a bit about leadership in general. You've managed to build quite a few businesses. What would you say does it take, in your opinion, to be a successful, call it leader, CEO, founder of a company?
Well, it's, the entrepreneurial world is the Olympics of business. Uh, Anybody can go get a job in a corporation and get a cranked out paycheck and fake it. Um, but when you take it on your own and you're writing your own paycheck, if you've got the money,
Yeah,
the whole world changes. Um, you have to be really tough, resilient. You're going to get 100 no's for every yes you might get, whether you're chasing customers or trying to raise money. So that kind of persistence and resilience is the foundation to it. Anybody can quit. Not quitting and knowing that you're on a solid course with a viable market and a vision for the solution are really foundation to being able to do this sort of thing. I've got the benefit of doing it now for a number of years and have had successes. And I'd safely say that I know the guerrilla tactics of a startup, and they are very important to be able to work. The institutionalized side of startups, like Y Combinator and the other incubators, I've never been interested in because the whole structured approach to doing a startup seems to me contrary to the chaotic drive that it I think takes to make it work. Um, so it's an important set of defective genes that are required to make this kind of thing
yeah, yeah,
tick over and come to fruition. There's an old study out of Inc. magazine 20 some years ago where they went and talked to a few hundred successful Silicon Valley entrepreneurs.
yeah,
And they said, what's the first thing that motivates them? It's the excitement about the product and the technology that they're building. The second thing that motivates them is the acceptance of that product and what that means to them in the marketplace. Third thing that motivates them is the acceptance of their peers and everything. The fourth thing that motivates them is maybe the money. And if you go to the VCs and the capital markets, the first thing that motivates them is the money. The second thing that motivates them is the money. The third thing, yada yada, you know where that goes.
yeah. With
So it's the excitement of the space, the vision. You go read Alexander Graham Bell or Thomas Edison and what they went through. I mean, Edison can give you 1,100 ways not to invent a light bulb.
mm,
Uh, so if you can't stick with it from a resource standpoint, an emotional commitment standpoint, it's a tough ride, but the gratification out of it is phenomenal.
that is such good advice that you just gave us there. That's what we call golden nuggets, George. And then just lastly from my side, you've obviously mentioned now there's a couple of things in the pipeline, but what's on the horizon for 2025 for you? What's the plans if there's one or two you can share?
Our big push this year is to get into first beta customers um, end of second quarter, start of third quarter. Um, and then we get about 20 of these MSP customers up and running, and then we're facing crossing the chasm and really starting to get into the market. We're going to be going international right out of the chute. We're in discussions with marketing partners in Europe. Um, and right now, we're an engineering firm. By the end of this year, we will be primarily a marketing company.
Wow.
Uh,
It sounds like a fool, yeah. Well, George, I need to thank you for coming on today, and thank you that you're willing to share your knowledge and obviously, tell us a bit more about your company. I wish you guys all the best for the year. It sounds like a busy one coming up.
mhm.
And just just before I let you go, tell me, George, is there where can the audience get hold of you guys?
Our website is trustworks.com. My email is sidman@trustworks.com. I'm up on LinkedIn under my name. And that should give anybody the connection they need.
Excellent. Well, George, thanks for joining. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Take care.
Take care.